Welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. I'm Miff Galloway, a performance coach passionate about supporting ambitious and high-performing women just like you who know they have untapped potential just waiting to be unleashed. If you're looking to massively uplevel your performance in all areas of life, you've come to the right place. My goal on this podcast is to take you beneath the surface so you can connect with yourself on a deeper level while providing you with valuable insights and the tools necessary to navigate life's challenges and go after your goals with strength, clarity, and wisdom. If you're ready to uncover the truth which lies underneath so you can recognize your powerful feminine leadership style, pursue your goals unapologetically, and thrive in every aspect of your life, hit the follow button and get ready to explore the incredible possibilities that lie within you. Together, we'll uncover your next steps in achieving peak performance, because actually, you can. Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Actually You Can. Today, I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing an incredible guest whose story I just had to share with you. From learning to write in the sand in his beloved Zimbabwean homeland, to earning a doctorate in electrochemistry in his new home of Australia, to founding a charity that empowers children out of poverty, Alfred's captivating story has the power to change the life of everyone who hears it. I hope you find Alfred's story as inspiring as I did and feel motivated to discover what lights you up and share it with the world to help make it a better place for all. Let's jump in. Alfred, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Hey, Miss, how are you doing? Well, you're awesome. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you.
You're very kind, Alfred. I'm really excited to talk to you specifically about your passion and how you've managed to create such a positive change in the world. And to kick us off, I think it could be helpful to paint a picture for the audience. Our childhoods can have an incredible impact on the direction which we choose to take our lives. And so I'd love for you to share with the audience, what was life like for 6 and 7-year-old Alfred? And in particular, what happened during this time that influenced the person you are today?
Oh, thank you very much, for asking me that question, because, it's the magic of hindsight, isn't it? When we go back and we trace our journeys, and that's when we begin to see how our childhoods really shape, the people that we become. And I always go back to a time when I was 6 years old, and I remember starting primary school in a remote village in Zimbabwe, one of the most remote places that you can find in the country. So I remember my first day of school walking barefoot with my brothers, but we were probably some of the happiest kids that you could find around. I always say this to my friends. They say, we did not feel like we lacked anything. If anything, we were just super excited just at the prospect of being in school and playing with our friends. So my first day of school was great. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And also my first year of school. But my life changed when I was 7 years old because my dad moved me to the city from the village. And that's the first time I walked into a library, and I couldn't believe the amount of books that I could access. So I started reading, but I also had older siblings who read a lot, and I just learned from them. I spent most of my time in the library. I just started reading, got lost in books, and and the rest is history.
And so if you're able to reflect back on that time, what was that feeling for you reading books? What was the emotions that were coming up? What was reading enabling you to do at that time?
Yeah, it's looking back at village life, right? Primary schools in villages in Zimbabwe is still, even up until now, some schools do not have libraries, so they don't have many books. And I remember my grade 1 teacher used to hold a book. He's the only one who had a book, and he would read to all of us, right? And we were sitting there as little kids, we taking in all the information. But moving to the city and actually getting access to books that you can read all by yourself, and you've got thousands of books at your disposal, you kind of just develop this interest. Well, at least for me, I developed this interest. I just wanted to read as much as I can. But also my dad really realized that, coming from the village and coming to a school in the city, I was lagging behind. So I had to spend so much time in the library, and he'd give us 50 cents just to pay for a subscription at the library and would go to the library every single day and just read as much as we could. So getting access to those books, I discovered the joy of reading. I always tell people that I traveled to England, I traveled to America. I went everywhere, through books, because then my imagination, became more active. I could see myself in the books. I could see myself with the Hardy Boys solving mysteries, right? I could see myself traveling around the world in 180 days. I could see myself rhyming with Dr. Seuss. And that's what books did for me. They just opened up a whole new world of discovery and adventure as a kid.
It sounds absolutely magical even hearing you describe that. And I'm interested for you to share with the audience now, what impact do books have in your life today?
Oh, today, well, I make sure that I try to read as much as I can during my free time. So even up until now, books have such a big impact. I learn a lot through books, and I read all sorts of books. Even now, I read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of fiction. Whenever I get myself or get time to myself, I go to a bookstore, I purchase a book. So I'm constantly learning new things, and that's the impact that books have on me currently, that I'm learning new knowledge. If I don't understand anything, I just go straight to a book. And the thing is, I just love the physical books. I like the smell of, a new book when you open it up and you flip the pages and you take in that smell of a new book. I just love that. So sometimes I mix it up. I listen to books on Audible, and when I'm going for a walk, I'm listening to a book, or with my kids, I'm reading to my kids as well. And I see that impact, not only on me, but also on my kids. They've become readers because we just have books everywhere in the household. So, well, we spend so much of our free time just reading books, or book hunting, we call it on Sundays. I take my kids out, we go book hunting, we go to the secondhand bookstores, we get to all the other libraries that we can access, and we try to read as much as we can.
I love that, book hunting, and I can just smell the smell of the secondhand bookstore and the pages as you're talking through that too. I'm a sucker for a good physical book. I do love the good audiobook nowadays. I think it makes it more accessible, but nothing beats a hardcover book, especially one that's seen some stuff.
Oh,
And so I think you're being very modest as well in terms of the impact that books have on your life now. I would love for you to share a bit more detail. I know books had an incredible impact on your childhood. What have you done with books to be able to take that passion you have and share it with the broader community?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the impact that books have had on my own development since that time when I got access to a library. And by the time I got to year 7, in the city where I'd been reading quite a lot, then you couldn't tell the difference between the village boy and the kids who had grown up in the city. And by the time I finished high school, again, I was so confident. I'd learned so much. I could speak good English, and then I realized that at that time, as a 19-year-old, because I had traveled around the world through books, it was easy for me to pack my bags and go to another country and study as a university student. So I went to Namibia as a 19-year-old, and I studied in Namibia, and again, it just opened up a lot more doors for me. And fast forward so many years later, I came to Wollongong to study for my PhD. And all because I got access to books, right? I developed my vocabulary, my literacy developed a lot, and then it opened up a lot of doors. It was more like a domino effect, ending up with a PhD here in Wollongong. No, if you really look at where I was as a 6-year-old and where I ended up as a 36-year-old, those worlds are two different worlds apart, right? Because there's a village kid in a place where there's no industry and there is no running water or electricity as a year 1 student. To end up with a PhD in electrochemistry, that's a long shot. It's not too many people who manage to do that. But I attribute all of that to access to books and also the belief that my parents had in me from a young age that I could amount to somebody, and also my siblings who supported me along the way. So now I'm sharing that passion with other people. I'm rescuing books from landfill. Right now, I'm sitting outside a facility where we have over 20,000 books which are in a shipping container. It pains me that we have to get rid of some of the books and put them in the skip because they are not in good condition. It just breaks my heart. So what we do at the moment is we rescue these books from landfill, send them over to Zimbabwe, and we set up libraries for disadvantaged kids. And the reason why we do this is because I know what books have done for me. I've experienced it. I'm a testimony to that. So if we can take books back to those communities, if I can take those books back to those communities and kickstart somebody's journey from a young age, from as young as 6 years old, kickstart their literacy development, who knows where they would end? Who knows where they're going to end up, right? So it's that belief in people's potential, realizing that if we give them a hand up right at the beginning, they can amount to whatever it is that they want to. They can be whatever they want to be in the world.
I love everything you've shared in that, and particularly how you've managed to really turn your passion to something that has created such a positive impact in this world. And so I'm interested to hear, because not everyone does that. Not everyone, first of all, really identifies what they're passionate about, but secondly, uses that power for such good. And so I'm interested to hear, how did that look for you? How did you decide to end up starting a charity and doing such great work? Was it something that you'd always planned to do, give back to your community, or what did that journey look like for you?
Well, we never planned it. It was not by plan. It wasn't a clear-cut plan that we had, and a whole project plan as to how we were going to roll it out. No, it wasn't like that. It was mainly from, again, the magic of hindsight, right? Looking back, pausing, taking time to reflect on one's journey. And when I finished my PhD in Wollongong, I remember I had a conversation with one of my colleagues there, and I was tracing my journey from where I had started off. And they could not believe it, right? And I realized that I had to do something to give back to my community. Initially, my sister and I were going to send money to support kids so that they could attend school, right? The kids who could not pay school fees. That was the initial idea. But we realized that raising money and just handling people's money sometimes can be a problem. So we thought, so one day during my lunch break, I went to a Vinnie's bookstore, and I was just paging through. I noticed that they had so many books that they were getting rid of. So I asked them if I could get the books, and they gave me my first donation of 564 books.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, if I can send these books back to the same community where I started off, back to the village where I started off, maybe other kids will benefit from that. So I had a few conversations with a few friends, and somebody suggested that I set up a Facebook page. We did, and then before we knew it, we had books everywhere. I was doing radio interviews, and I was talking to so many people, bookstores that were closing down, were offering to give us books. So we found ourselves with so many books, so much that we did not have any storage space. And then my wife came up with a brilliant idea to start a charity, because we didn't even have money to ship the books over to Zimbabwe. So we started a charity. We started doing some sausage sizzle, with a bit of fundraising here and there. And by the end of that year, we had 30,000 books, all packed in a shipping container and ready to go to Zimbabwe.
Wow. And what has been the impact of those 30,000 books and the charity? What impact have you had back in Zimbabwe to date?
I have to say that was our first win, probably one of the biggest wins for us at that moment, because we demonstrated that we could collect books, we could sort books, we could rally a team of volunteers who are passionate about books and be able to distribute these books to kids in need. But before we donated the books, we had our team of librarians on the ground who went and educated the community and the schools about the importance of a library. So much that we empowered them before we gave them the books. And when we did all of this, just came from having conversations with people who are passionate about libraries, rural school libraries. And I have to say, we've got an amazing team of librarians on the ground who take this work seriously. And they do it out of their own good hearts. And they don't, sometimes we can't even pay them, right? Because they're just amazing human beings. But because of their passion and their willingness to help, and also because we had started this initiative, the community started to come on board. The school authorities started to come on board. The kids started reading. They had reading programs in some of their schools. Wow. So with the first lot of books that we donated to Zimbabwe, we took to Zimbabwe, we set up about 6 libraries. Wow. And with each library, we made sure that the librarians went first, did the groundwork, talked to the communities, talked to the school authorities, talked to the chief, talked to everyone in the community who would be interested or the key stakeholders on the ground. We call it the last mile. That last mile that most not-for-profits may not be able to reach. We reached that last mile, talking to everyone on the ground to ensure that this project was sustainable. And then people started coming on board. The kids started reading. Their parents started reading as well. At one point, I remember I went back to Zimbabwe and there were grandparents to the primary school kids who were sitting in the library reading, right? And they kept asking, do you also have content for us? Do you also have reading material for us? And we realized that our libraries are not just school libraries. They've now become community libraries. So much that even a grandmother can walk in there, pick a book and be able to read for a few minutes at least during their free time. So the kids have developed their literacy skills because now they have access to books.
Wow. And you've opened up a whole new world for multiple communities. I love that they've turned not into just school libraries, but really resources for the entire community as well. And out of interest, do you have any particular stories about the impact of the work that your team has done on the ground that you would like to share with the audience?
Where do I start?
Probably was too many.
Do I start? There are just so many of them because every time I go back to Zimbabwe and I donate books, I'll just tell you one of the things that I've noticed is that when we donate books and we give these kids a book to at least open and just page through, I've noticed that the kids don't hog the books. They want to share with the next person, right? They immediately want to share, with the next person. I see their faces light up. And at that moment, you realize that kids are not selfish with information. The moment they learn something new, they want to share with the next person. And I think this is the one thing that should be driving us us as humanity, that when we have something valuable or when we learn something, we should be able to give freely to the next person so that they can also enjoy the feeling of discovery or, that happiness, that joy. We should be able to share it without even thinking about it, without even thinking twice. And that's what I've noticed. And I remember one kid, Joseph, at Chisuma Primary School. Little Joseph, he never used to read out loud in class because he was not so confident and he wasn't so good. But when we donated books at Chisuma Primary School, the librarian rang me the other day and she said, hey, you know what? You won't believe what has happened in Joseph's class. Joseph has been coming into the library. One day, the teacher walked in and asked Joseph if he could read out loud to the whole class. Actually, the teacher didn't ask Joseph. The teacher just asked if any kid would want to read out loud. And the kids all shouted out and pointed at Joseph, right? Because they wanted to make fun of him. What they didn't know was that Joseph had been going into the library and reading. So Joseph slowly got up. He held the book in his hands, shaking a little bit, but he started reading. And the more he read, the more confident he became. Because this little boy had access to books. He developed a confidence in reading out loud. He'd been reading out loud to the librarian. So they would have one-on-one sessions with the librarian. But if we hadn't done this, if we had not donated books at Chisuma Primary School, imagine what would have happened to little Joseph. Little Joseph could have been one of those kids who just falls through the cracks because no one has taken time, or no one would have taken time to listen to them read, or no one would have given him the opportunity to open a book, just to open a book and to learn how to read. in front of other people.
That is an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing it. And you can really just hear how much hope and opportunity you've been able to instill in communities of people just through the incredible work that you do. And I'm interested to hear on that note, what is your mission? What impact do you hope that Aussie Books for Zim can have in the communities?
Yeah, so we've been donating books, right? And sometimes I feel like we've just become a logistics company because the logistics are a nightmare. And I hate that. I just don't like the fact that we spend so much of our time uh, focusing on the logistics. How do we move books? How do we get books to these kids? And somebody will come to me and say, hey, why don't you send ebooks because it's easy? And I say, well, some parts they don't have
Internet,
electricity.
yeah.
Believe it or not, these resources that we are stacking in landfill are actually very valuable for some kids. So I hate the fact that we've become more like a logistics company, and we're going to have to change that because we want to make a bigger impact. And what a bigger impact looks like, what big impact looks like is developing literacy programs. Now that we developed we've donated the books over and the kids have access to the books, we want to develop literacy programs where kids are actually coming into the libraries and they're being taught how to read and so that they can develop their literacy from a young age. And going forward, I've always said, a million kids in 10 years. I used to say that 5 years ago, but I realized that it's taken us so much longer to do that because of COVID, we couldn't do any fundraising. We rely on volunteers and fundraising because we don't have much money in our pockets, right? So that work has kind of stalled a bit, but we want to revive all those activities that we've been having, but especially starting with the literacy programs, measuring the impact that we've already created in these 16 libraries. By the way, we've set up 16 libraries now in Zimbabwe, and we've built 4 libraries brick by brick. Two of them have been funded by the Australian Embassy in Zimbabwe through their direct aid program. And we thank them for doing that because we managed to build 2 identical libraries in Matebeleland North, 2 remote schools that needed libraries, a safe space for kids to come in and discover the joy of reading. So we want to do more of that. We want to build more libraries. We want to set up more literacy programs so that kids can read more or can learn how to read.
And you can hear just by sharing your mission that you're so deeply passionate about this. It's like, despite all the obstacles, this is going to happen. It's no if, buts, or maybe. It's just how it's going to happen for you. And so I'm interested to hear what's motivating you to push through all these challenges and to deal with all the logistics. What's the bigger driver behind all this for your resilience with this mission?
Love. It's love.
Beautiful.
If you love people, if you love people, you don't need to find another why to make a difference. You don't. If you love people, you can shove self aside and focus on other people. And I think that's what life should be about. And that's just my belief. Develop a love for people. Because sometimes it gets hard. And it's been hard for us. At some point, my wife and I, we got into a point where we say, we're just going to quit on this thing. And we've quit on it so many times in our minds, but we keep coming back to it. The next day we come back to it. Just right now, if I tell you, I'm sitting outside one of our 20-foot shipping containers that has been sitting here for years, and we've been using it for storage. And I've driven 300 kilometers to come and just unpack it right now. I could be doing other things, right? I could be doing other things back at home. But we realize that if we do not sacrifice our time and our efforts, if we don't sacrifice even our own energy for the benefit of other people, then what else? What then are we doing? But if we love people, it doesn't feel like sacrifice. It feels so normal to us. It's just the stuff that we do. Because I came from a village where I didn't have books. And I know what happened to the people that I started year 1 with and year 2 with who never got to finish primary school. I know the girls that I went to school with who got married at 13 and 14 because they just never left those communities, because again, they did not have a good literacy. They did not have good education. But I was fortunate. I was one of those kids who was very fortunate to move to the city and have a whole world of opportunities open up for me because somebody believed in me. My dad believed in me. And if I can believe for some kid, one kid, I may not know who their name is, I may not know where they are, but if I can only believe that they have the potential and I give them access through books, through one book, if I can give them access to the whole world through one book, then I feel I've done my job. So this is what drives us to do this. Sometimes it gets so difficult, we want to quit. Sometimes we whinge about it, we cry about it. But we know that if we don't do this work, there's a kid who's going to fall through the cracks and may not fully realize their potential. And that's what breaks my heart.
And I can only imagine a world where everyone shows love in that way, and I really like how you said if we love people it doesn't feel like a sacrifice, and also the power of belief as well. I really appreciate that, and I've definitely been the benefactor of people's belief in me, and I'm always so appreciative of that, and I try to inspire that in others through the coaching work that I do, as I know you do in your speaking work as well. And I'd love to hear from you if someone is looking for a way to be able to contribute to the community. I think often people are so taken back by perhaps the enormity or perceived enormity to have a difference in the community. What's one thing someone could do to have an immediate positive impact in the world around them?
I think tapping into your values and being true to self and saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what I love doing, and stepping into action driven by those values. So, for instance, if my value for me is love, then I need to show that love. Sometimes we don't need to look too far to find the mission, to find the work. It's all around us. Can I show love? Or can my values come to life in this space? Can I bring my values into life in this space that I'm in? Right? So you start looking around and you realize that there's always a need. And once you identify that need, you don't have to overthink it. Just start by doing something. No matter how small it is, just start somewhere.
I love what you mentioned about values, and I honestly believe that one of our purposes here in life is to uncover what our values are and live them, because if you're living in alignment with your values, that brings such a magnetic energy along with it that can't help but impact those around you. And so I love how you've mentioned and recommended people connect with our values and do something that is aligned with that, because I think if we all make the collective decision to do that and use our values to contribute in a really positive way, we'll make the world a better place for everyone. And so thank you so much, Alfred, for coming on and sharing your incredible story with us today, and for showing that you can have such an incredible impact by following what it is that lights you up and what you're passionate about. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit more about how people can support the incredible work that you do with Aussie Books for Zim.
Thanks, Miff. There's one thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of other people coming on board as well and trying to help. We are driven by the ancient African philosophy of Ubuntu, which says, I am because you are because I am. And that's just scratching the surface, really, when you say that. But it's much, much deeper than that. It says that I think when you look at just everyday life, it means that I cannot go and throw a party when Miff is having a bad day. Then it means I should stop doing whatever it is that I'm doing and at least spend time with you. If you're crying, I sit there and I cry with you. Because my success is your success and my pain is your pain. And that's the ancient African philosophy of Ubuntu. In my language, in Shona, we call it Hunu. Hunu means that you stop whatever it is that you're doing so that you can help the next person. And I'm not saying that people should stop whatever it is that they're doing and help us with our charity. But as a collective, we can achieve so much more than as individuals. And Ubuntu focuses pretty much focuses on we and us instead of me as the individual, shifting the focus. We're literally shifting the focus from me to us. So, so whatever it is that we do, the work that we do, it's driven by the passion and the desire to help other people, shifting the focus from me to us. And at the moment, we've shipped the books. I think we recently just shipped over 90,000 books in a 40-foot shipping container that's landed in Zimbabwe at the moment. It's still sitting there because we need to distribute the books, but we've run out of money to distribute these books to the different schools, to the kids who are in need. So we are appealing for donations to be able to do that work. But after we've done that, we also want to come back and measure the impact. And I think impact measurement is really key in this work, so that we see how sustainable our projects have been. We want to go back to all the 16 libraries, talk to the kids who have gone through those libraries. Some of them are in high school right now, others have probably finished school, but we want to be able to talk to them and capture those stories of impact that we can share back with whoever would have donated books here in Australia, or whoever would have donated money to our charity. So we are appealing for money to be able to do those programs more than anything else. And I've noticed that the moment we put ourselves out there, people want to give us books because everyone has got books, right? But we've run out of storage. We've got too many books at the moment and no storage space. So we are not taking any more books. We just want to focus more on the literacy development. Now we want to go back to the schools, really push for literacy development. And we've partnered with amazing organizations like Solar Buddy, because we work in communities where there's no electricity. Solar Buddy have donated over 4,000 solar lamps to us. So we've gone back to Zimbabwe and donated solar lamps to these kids in those schools, in those libraries, who are using those libraries that we've set up. So the next thing that we want to be doing is measuring that impact as well, to see the impact of the solar lamps and the books on the development of these kids. So there's a lot that we're looking to do there. So, every dollar makes a difference.
And so for those listeners today, you can make an incredible difference to someone else's life today by identifying what your values are and living in alignment with those and sharing it with others, and also by making a donation to the incredible work that Alfred and his team do at Aussie Books for Zim. I'll make sure I put the link to donate in the show notes. But thank you again so much, Alfred, for taking time out of your day, out of unpacking books from shipping containers today, to talk more about the incredible work that you do and the impact that books has had in your life and how you're sharing that with others.
Thank you very much, Miff. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope this was helpful. If you thought of someone while listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could share this episode with them. While you're doing that, please also take a moment to leave a review on the podcast if you haven't yet already. It takes less than a minute and it means so much to me and helps this podcast to reach more people just like you. Thank you so much for that, and I'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and achieve every dream you have, because actually, you can.